You've probably heard 1,000 strategies to grow your podcast, batch more, niche down, monetize faster. But there's one thing that no one talks about enough, and that's your voice. Not just your sound, but your truth, your message, your energy. The truth is, strategy without voice is just noise, and your podcast doesn't need more noise. It needs resonance. Hello, and welcome to the Voicekeeper podcast. I'm Caroline, and this space is where we reconnect your strategy to your soul. If you've ever felt like your podcast is draining you instead of growing with you, this episode is your invitation to begin again. Today, I am so excited to be introducing the Voicekeeper Framework. This is a path that supports you through the full evolution of your podcast journey, from misalignment to magnetic leadership. But of course, before we begin, let's take a moment. I want you to breathe with me. I want you to feel into your body. Ask yourself gently, where am I in my podcast journey right now? Do you feel disconnected? Are you trying to rebuild with more intention? Or are you ready to be more visible and lead with clarity? There is no wrong answer here. Each season is sacred, and your voice gets to grow with you. Before we dive in, I just want to say how incredible it is to be recording this episode of the podcast. I was really debating whether or not I was going to record it this week. We had family in town, which was amazing. I got to have a little staycation, and it was actually very energizing. It just felt so good to have people in my house, have conversation. We were going and doing with the kids, but it was just really fun to sit and share with someone what I've been working on and this idea of what a voice keeper is and how I'm incorporating it into my business. It really started to make it feel real. And so I was like, I have to sit down and record this episode. I'm really excited that you're on this journey with me. This concept of a voice keeper is something that really was born out of work that I did with my business coach, Quinn Tempest, on purpose and the purpose in my business and the purpose that I'm put on this earth for. And it's something that I have been leaning more and more and more into in the last, I would say, really 6 months. And it's really affecting my work, how I show up, how I want to be in the world. And I had this epiphany one day. I was like, I need this to translate into the rest of my business. What does that look like? And for me, it really meant creating this framework. Now, this framework I already have. It's something that I've already been using and have, I have a whole formula for it, but it was really cool to take it and put a name to it. And so I want to share it with you all today. I hope that what will happen in this episode is that you will see yourself in one of the phases that I'm going to talk about. And I hope that that gives you some kind of direction or something to look forward to look at what the next thing will be. So let's dive in. We're often handed content strategies without context, right? Like we're told to get visible, but we don't really talk about how to stay aligned. And I have seen so many brilliant women start their podcasts full of passion, full of, they feel like they've got a purpose, only to end up burnt out, lost in the noise, or unsure how to make it work for their business. And that's why I created the Voicekeeper Framework. It's not a formula. This is a pathway. It's one that mirrors real cyclical journey of podcasting, from awakening to reclaiming to embodying. So let's walk through it together. The first phase is what I like to call the Awaken phase. This is the moment when you feel something's off. Like you're doing what you were told would work. You're batching episodes, staying consistent, following trends, but it's just not clicking. And you may be saying to yourself, I'm doing all the things, but it's not working. Or I feel lost in the noise. This is a very, very common phase that I find people come to me in. And how I work with clients in the Awaken phase is we first start by gently slowing down. So we're going to take a look at where the podcast feels misaligned or overextended, how your episodes are or are not connecting to your purpose. And then the other question that I really like to ask is, whether this current strategy reflects who you are now, not just who you were when you started. I've talked a lot about how podcast evolves with your business and evolves with you and your message. And sometimes we evolve and we forget to bring the podcast with us, and then it stops working for our business. And so it's really important to begin to reorient, to clear the noise, so that way your real voice can come through. I like to imagine this phase as like the foundational phase. So a lot of times when I'm working with one-on-one clients on strategy, this is where we will start to go, okay, well, what is your purpose? Where do you want people to be going? What is the ultimate goal for your podcast? And then how can we start to create things around that? I find that if we don't have those things in place, the rest of it does not work. And so it's really important when you're in the awaken phase to take a minute and to say, like, why do I feel lost in the noise? Why does my podcast feel really hard? Is it because the processes are hard? Is it because the messaging doesn't feel like me? Is it because I'm not seeing that, quote unquote return that I want to see? And a lot of times in this phase, it's where I'm able to break down a lot of the mindset blocks that my clients are having so they can start to move to the next phase, which is called reclaim. So in the reclaim phase, this is like when you've seen what's not working and now you've got clarity, you're ready to rebuild it. So you may start saying things like, I want my podcast to feel like me again, and I'm ready to grow. I'm ready to grow, but only if it feels aligned. So when I work with clients in reclaim, one of the first things we will do is look at content. So we're going to realign content and your offers to support your business. So a lot of times we'll talk about like, okay, how is our content leading people into our world? Our episodes, are they actually like meeting our listeners where they're at? And are we sending them to something that makes sense, right? We're also going to work on creating episode structures that feel easeful and intuitive. So when you sit down to record, like, I don't want it to feel clunky. I don't want it to feel robotic. I want it to feel like you. So what does that look like? And how does that engage your listeners and get them excited, right? We will also then map out a sustainable schedule that honors your energy, not the algorithm. So again, looking at your goals, going back to that awaken phase, like, what are your goals? How can we create content, a schedule, and structure around all that? And this really is where you start to reclaim your rhythm. You've heard me talk about rhythm on the podcast. Your message, how you talk about what you do, right? What is your message? What is your purpose? Why do you have this podcast in the first place, right? Now it's going to start coming through. And then we also talk a lot about capacity. And this is where, like, you'll hear me talk about tools such as my strategic episode templates. I have a podcast planning dashboard coming out soon that really supports this moment, this reclaim moment. And then a lot of my, kits and templates that I have, which are designed to help you podcast from a place of ease, because that is so, so important. I will always say, like, if podcasting feels hard, then that's when you're not going to do it and you're not going to be consistent, and that's when it stops working for you. So I'm always trying to figure out how to make podcasting easier. And so one of the ways I do that is by creating tools. So we've done Awaken, we've done Reclaim. Okay, so what happens after that? Because there is one more phase. It doesn't just end with getting your schedule and everything ready to go. Now you've clarified your message. Now you're ready to own it. And this is really where I see people embodying their message, embodying their purpose, really showing up on their podcast in a meaningful way. So that's why I named this phase Embody. So you might say things like, I'm ready to lead more boldly, or how do I grow without losing myself, right? Because you may now be thinking like, okay, well, I'm ready to grow, but when I tried to do that again, I ended up back in the awaken phase, right? We want to keep the momentum going. So when I work with clients who are in the embody phase, we focus on visibility strategies rooted in resonance, but not pressure. So how are we getting in front of new audiences in a way that feels good? How are we getting your podcast in front of new audiences in a way that feels good? We want to look at long-term systems that support sustainable growth. So theoretically, as you grow, as your podcast grows, your business grows, what does it look like down the road when maybe you're doing all the processes yourself, but now you have more clients and you don't necessarily want to do that? How can we set you up with systems to support that, right? And then really using your voice as a magnet for aligned clients and community. This is where we really start to talk about like creating a sense of belonging around your podcast. You will hear me say like you want your people to feel seen and heard. And in the embody phase, like you've kind of figured that out. And so now it's like, okay, we're really starting to attract the right people and build something around our podcast. And this is really where your podcast becomes a portal, not just to your offers, but to your deeper mission. So, I think about like the clients I've worked with recently. I have a client who is literally creating a movement around her podcast. And so there was a lot of conversation about like, okay, well, what does it mean to show up and embody this, right? I have a client who was a health and wellness coach, and she really was in the Awaken phase. We did a lot of work in Awaken and getting her foundation strong. We started that reclaiming. And so now she's stepping into that embody phase. So this is probably one of my favorite phases because it really does become about like, okay, I've got my podcast on autopilot. It's doing what it needs to do. How do I then grow with intention and in a way that feels aligned? And this is really like where I feel like I am in my business and my journey. It's like, okay, I've got the foundation. So now it's time to start sharing and spreading the word, right? So some tools that I've created to support this is obviously the Strategize and Shine Academy. My one-on-one coaching sessions, we actually work through each of these 3 phases, and I purposefully personalize. I personalize them very purposefully to you, your goals, your podcast, your vision, all of the things. So yeah, and what's really cool about this is in developing this framework, again, this was something that I already had. I was already using. I'm just like literally putting names to it. It was really neat because one of the things that I went and did is I have the podcast strategy shop, which is just podcaststrategyshop.com or wildhomepodcasting.com/shop. And I actually took everything in the shop and I categorized it into these 3 categories. So there's literally a page where you can go and read and figure out what phase you're in. And then you can actually look at products to support that phase specifically. So you're going to find templates, guides, support systems to meet you exactly where you are. No pushing, no performing. It's just structure to support your growth. So whether you're reimagining your content or stepping into bold leadership, there is something there for you. And I'm always adding new things. In fact, I'm working right now on a kit for hosting your guests on your podcast. And that should be going live in the shop soon. And then I mentioned the podcast planning tool, which I am still finalizing. So that should be going in there soon as well. Yay! Oh my gosh. So now you all know what I have been working on. It's so hard for the last couple of months. So it is May 30th when I'm recording this, and this really came into fruition, really started gelling around my birthday in March. And in April, I went on a mastermind retreat and solidified some more of it. And then it just like kaboomed from there, just all came out. And so I'm so excited to be sharing this. You're going to see some things changing in my world. The name of my business is not changing, but some of my offers and names are going to be changing because I want it to all be very cohesive around this idea of the Voicekeeper. And I'm going to be sharing more about what that means on the podcast moving forward and how I incorporate this incredible belief system that I have developed around the importance of your voice into the work that I do. So stick around. I'm so excited. And just a quick reminder before you go, like your voice is not just sound. It's a strategy. Let your podcast be the place where your voice leads gently, powerfully, and with full permission to evolve. This is just the beginning. Welcome to my Voicekeeper journey. Until next time, keep speaking what's true. Your voice is always enough.